So what I'm going to talk about now is how I've been applying generative AI, where it's really augmented intelligence, and large language models to the courses I teach here at Vanderbilt. And there's a great movie by Stanley Kubrick starring Peter Sellers multiple times over called Dr. Strangelove, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, because this was done in the shadow of the Cold War. And so I've changed this to be How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bot. So we're going to talk about my experience and exposure to this. So starting, the beginning of spring semester in 2023, so about 6 to 8 months ago, I stumbled upon ChatGPT and got very excited and began to apply it to all kinds of things I'm doing in my courses here at Vanderbilt. And I'll focus on just a couple of the courses. One course is the course I'm teaching now, which is parallel functional programming with Java and Android. Another course is a course on scalable microservices. And both of these courses involve developing apps and sometimes server-side components that take advantage of modern multi-core processors and microservices in distributed and networked environments in order to build more scalable and interesting projects. So we've been doing all kinds of fun things, for example, like building a movie recommender system with AI and non-AI parts, using AI to enable us to do this stuff more effectively. These are upper-level mezzanine courses, which means both graduates and undergraduates can take them. And I mention that deliberately because there's some thorny issues that we're still wrestling with as the computer science department about trying to use this generative AI technology in the intro courses. Because it starts getting a little bit more murky because you really want people to have built a foundation of problem solving and programming and computational thinking before you start letting AI take them in other directions. So it helps to have the background. And I find that very important for myself because when ChatGPT starts to hallucinate, I can discover it very quickly, and I don't waste time expecting it to do things it's not going to be able to do, or I come up with a way to refine my questions or the prompt models I'm using or the techniques I'm using to make it more productive. But if I didn't have that background, I might be lured into a sense of false certainty that what it was doing was sensible. So my goal with doing this stuff is to try to have more fun with the things that I like to do and yet be more effective at the things that aren't as much fun, but hey, I've got to do them because I have to teach a class, I have to give grades and so on. So some things that I really, really like to do, I love to create and give lectures like this one. I like to create and explain code in Java, C++, you name it. I like to make programming assignments. I like to do reviews of my students' code and give them feedback. That's all fun. But some things I don't really like to do, but I've got to do. I don't really like creating tests and quizzes for some reason, or knowledge check questions. I think that's kind of boring. I don't really like to do the final course grading for the programming assignments, although I do like to do the reviews. Keep your eyes on that one. And whenever I give a lecture, I'll be darned if I can think after the lecture what I talked about. So when I want to write the description in my description box on my video, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you what I said. So these are all things I really don't like to do, but I've got to do them. So surprise, surprise, those are the things that I'm turning over to ChatGPT to help me with. Now, we're not going to talk about a lot of this stuff. If you want to see all the other stuff I'm doing, take a look at this video, which talks about the quizzes and the lectures and the tests and summarizing content. That's all cool. We're going to focus on grading of programming assignments and reviewing of programming assignments. So one of the things we discovered to our chagrin, and I discovered it very early on last semester, was that augmented intelligence and ChatGPT and so on can often trivially generate very accurate solutions to programming assignments because we give overly detailed specifications. And I discovered this recently in conjunction with one of my colleagues. Many of you may have taken his course, Jerry Roth, data structures course. We were at a faculty retreat, and he hadn't used ChatGPT before, so I said, Jerry, send me an example of what you think is one of your hardest programming assignment specifications. So he sent me one for something called Guitar Hero, which simulates the plucking of a guitar string using the Karplus-Strong algorithm. If you've taken that course, you probably remember that assignment. So I said, great. I said, Jerry, watch this. I said, please read the given PDF file and generate a C++ program that implements this specification. Now, this goes on for quite a ways, many, many screens full and many prompts and so on. But when all was said and done, as Jerry and I were sitting there watching it, it pretty much generated the entire solution. And I turned to Jerry and I said, what do you think? And he said, Doug, I think it's time for me to retire. That was not the reaction I was hoping for, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, whether you're allowed to do this, whether it's ethical to do this really depends on the course and the instructor and the institutional policies. And in fact, Vanderbilt University has some policies now. You may not be aware of that, but if you go to this link, you can read about the generative AI policies for Vanderbilt. And basically what they say is it's up to the faculty to decide what to do. So you can ban it, you can embrace it, and everything in between. So, and this is basically the policy. It's literally one page, and this is it. And very interesting. I was all smug. I was like, oh, well, Jerry's teaching this 2201 class. It's easy peasy. You know, even a kindergartner could do this, or even 100 monkeys could do it if you gave them enough time or whatever. This will never happen in my course. Well, then what happened was I took one of my programming assignment specifications that I'd used last year, because I was preparing for my course for this semester, and I ran it through ChatGPT. And to my horror, with the scream, munch, ah, or something like, what's the other one? Home Alone. It's kind of like the Macaulay Culkin Home Alone thing. And I discovered it was generating solutions to my much more complicated solutions. So I knew I had a problem. And in fact, I had to stop everything and change everything for the next day because my assignment was going out the next day. So what I discovered, and what Jerry and I discovered, when you run into things where your programming specifications are too specific, you can use ChatGPT to save you. So I said, how can I modify these specifications so they're harder to reverse engineer with generative AI? That's a great question to ask ChatGPT. And lo and behold, it gave me a whole bunch of good results and good suggestions, which I use, and we'll talk about that. So if anybody here is familiar with Job, the book of Job, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord. ChatGPT taketh away, because it changed the way I had to do stuff, but it also gave me some perspectives on how to solve this problem. So blessed be the name of ChatGPT. However, what it basically said was, make your programming assignment specifications more abstract. Don't specify each step, which is what we've been doing to this point. Okay, that sounds good, but there's a new problem. All of a sudden, there's too many choices. People can do things any old way they want, and that causes problems, not so much for the students, although there are some challenges there. It's really hard for the assessors, because now we've got to grade these things, and they're all over the place, and it's much more difficult to figure out what's right or wrong. And this leads to a bunch of complexities. So the way I've been solving this problem for years was having myself and my colleague, Monty, write very, very sophisticated white box testing unit tests using mocking that would check to see whether the code is written in the way that we wanted it to. So it was a very highly opinionated code approach, very stylized, and so on. And what we did, because it was a Java course, he wrote all the mocking in Kotlin, which is more obscure, and he intentionally writes it difficult to reverse engineer. So it's very difficult to take this unit test and reverse engineer the solution. However, the problem was now we couldn't give hardcore, highly precise specifications because they'd be too easy to reverse engineer, which also made them hard to white box test. The other problem we have, and those of you who've taken CS 1101 and probably 2201, is what do you do when you have an army of graders who are going to grade all the assignments? That's another way to solve this problem. You come up with a rubric, and then you have people grade by the rubric. But that's very tricky, and it's very tricky because of what's known as the inter-rater reliability problem. If you've ever watched the Olympics, you know the Soviet judge would give you a low score if you're an American, and the American judge would give you a high score. So you've got to throw out the high and low and average the rest. But the bigger problem is there are some people who are easy graders. There's some people who are hard graders. How do you grade fairly at scale? Very hard problem. So we had to move away from these very highly prescriptive specifications. But this actually is a good thing if you can figure out how to solve the assessment problem, because it means the students have more choices to be creative, which is great. We want students to be creative, but we also want to be able to grade them in some timely manner. So what I've been using, of course, is AI plus, augmented intelligence, to improve how I review and assess my programming assignments in my CS courses. And here's the way it works. If you ever take one of my classes, you'll get a chance to experience this. So when an assignment is due, there's an initial submission, and it's submitted. And the first thing I do is I hand review all the submissions. And we're going to see that one of the goals here is to try to automate as many of these steps as possible so it works smoother. So I review everything. I still continue to review everything. And when I review everything, I create a video for every assignment, which I call the frequently made mistakes video. And you can click on this link to see an example. And that has a list of all the things that I see in people's solutions. And I also put those comments into their code and push them back to their GitLab repositories so they can fix them. So far, so good. So what I've been able to do in conjunction with one of my TAs, Skylar, who's very good at this, we are able to take my file of frequently made mistakes and then use ChatGPT to auto-generate a rubric which keeps track of what the incorrect solutions were that frequently occurred, what the correct solution should be, and then a description of what is happening. And so by using ChatGPT, we can ferret out this rubric from my analysis in a more automated way. So that's pretty darn cool. So ChatGPT can generate a rubric based on my analysis. And then I go in either me or the TA go in and we tweak a few things. But it's pretty easy to make that work. So that's pretty cool. The next step is for the students to revise their programs based on my feedback. And then they submit them to the TAs and the graders for final grading. And that's where they actually get a grade. Now, remember I told you before, I like to review stuff, but I don't really like to do the final review. I don't know why that is, but I like my TAs to do that. However, the problem is inter-rater reliability. Or more effectively, I can't do a Vulkan mind meld and download all my knowledge into each TA's brain to do the grading thoroughly and consistently the way I would do if I had all the time in the world and could do it myself. So we're going to have my graders do the reviewing. How can we make their lives easier? Well, once again, ChatGPT to the rescue. We've trained ChatGPT in order to be able to analyze student final submissions and check to see whether they have addressed the frequently made mistakes. So if you play your cards right and you're willing to put time into the class, you should end up getting 100 on the assignments because you're getting feedback, and then you just have to make sure that you understand enough to fix things. But it might be surprising, not everybody, some people are sloppy, they don't do it. Some people don't really understand, they don't take time to come to office hours, so there's still things that creep into the final submissions that are wrong, and therefore we have to take a look at analyzing it as automatically as possible. So here's an example of a Python script that basically gives a prompt that uses the persona pattern. You are a grader for a parallel functional programming course taught in Android and Java. I will give you a JSON rubric and Android Java code. For each item in the rubric, you will first output the function in the student's code that's relevant to that item, and you will output a grade of correct or incorrect. We're not actually giving letter grades, we're just saying right or wrong. Alternative answers to the correct code are permissible if they have the same functionality and are not following poor style conventions. And then this script goes through everybody's solution and analyzes it. And we use the private GPT instance here at Vanderbilt to do this, so it's not going out into the broader world. And this scales things up quite effectively because what's happened here is my initial pass, because it's augmented intelligence, created this frequently made mistakes rendition or description, which is used to generate the rubric, which is then used by ChatGPT to train what it's looking for, which is then used to scale up in order to get more effective analysis of what's good or bad or needs further improvement. One of the most interesting things I think about this is ChatGPT has proven to be a very effective tool when used for iterative improvements in its accuracy. There are situations, which you've undoubtedly discovered if you use ChatGPT, where it doesn't get it right the first time. And what I have learned is when it doesn't get it right the first time, rather than say, oh my goodness, ChatGPT sucks, large language models are bad, generative AI is the emperor's new clothes, has no clothes, et cetera, I come back and I say, hey, your answer to question 6 was incorrect. There is a Java for loop in that method, not a traditional index-based Java for loop. Please help me rephrase my prompt, my question, my rule, so you answer it correctly the first time. What does ChatGPT do? It says, oh, of course, it's always very effusive and very obsequious. You know, oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize for not understanding. Thank you for giving me a chance to learn and improve, whatever. And so, by the way, you can turn off the obsequiousness. There's a way to have a custom instructions that you will have for all your prompts. And you can say, do not apologize ever, right? And it's actually very refreshing when it stops doing that. So basically, it comes back and says, if you rephrase the question this way, I'll be able to get it right. And so you go back and you improve the rule. You improve the prompt. Good luck doing this with your favorite static analysis tool. If you're using a more traditional static analysis tool where you're writing in some formal notation and you can't quite figure out why you're getting the wrong answers, why you're getting false positives or false negatives, good luck going to your tool and asking it to tell you how to do a better job. It'll be like, huh? Because that's not the way these tools work. But because this is generative augmented intelligence, we can pair humans and computers together to be more effective at getting the right answers.